Alright, welcome back to day number 1, technically day number 2, but day number 1 of Immersive Railroading, modeling a steam locomotive. We're continuing the series. We're making a Denver Rio Grande Western K-27 to kind of show some basic skills and how I make some parts so that you can use that to formulate your own skills and your own methods and your own ways of making parts. And just take some inspiration for how I do things. My way is definitely not the way. There is no uber correct way to do anything, but I'm just wanting to show how I do things to help new people figure out how to model. So today we're going to be focusing on frames because you want a good backbone to your model. A cube frame is not the worst sin that's ever been committed. Just having a massive cube / triangle or whatever. But it's more preferable to have a 3D frame that's based upon your drawing. And if your drawing has a frame, your drawing will almost always have a frame. It may not have as detailed as what I have here, where I have a top view and I have a frame by itself on the left, and I can see it right here on the front side view. It may not always be that detailed, but if it is that detailed, you've just saved yourself so much work and so much time having to go look back at pictures and stuff and guess what you're doing. So here we're gonna examine a little bit, and as noted on my drawing right here on the left side, we have a different top of the cylinder saddle right here for this specific locomotive, which is the 461, which is what I'm modeling. It has inward sloping. These are the 3 or the 4 or 5 K-27s that had inward sloping piston valves, and the other ones have, as seen here, outward sloping piston valves, and they have slightly different tops of their cylinder saddles. So I know this drawing is slightly higher than it needs to be, but that's just because this is the frame for without this. So once this will all be brought up slightly compared to the right side or down or wherever once we finish. Drawing inaccuracies are inconsistencies. You got to learn to live with them, and then once you learn to live with them, you'll be able to model less heavily with them. They're more just a suggestion for what you should do. So we're going to go Shift S and cursor to world origin. This will return your cursor if you've accidentally, in my version, it's left click to move it. It might be right in yours. Cursor to world origin, it will return it onto the snap grid at the center of your instance of Blender, right here. Then we're going to go add mesh cube, and now we have a 2 foot by 2 foot or 1 meter by 1 meter, however your units are set up from the previous day, cube. And we're going to use this cube as the basis for our frame. This is just Control and S to kind of scale it down to a respectable size. And then it's still centered right here. So we're going to bring it over and up, and I'm going to look at my top side and make sure it's in the right location compared with my right. You're going to have places that aren't perfect, but that's just kind of part of the magic, I'd say, of modeling, is dealing with your inconsistencies here and there and everywhere. So there's 2 ways of going about this. The method I use, which is not the best method, if I'm being honest, is I'm just going to make a bunch of cubes. And I'll make this part, and then this part will translate probably to the end somewhere. Or this is just by itself, and then I'll make this once, this, and just copy paste, so that they're at the same distance apart, and then they're the exact same, because I enjoy symmetry. But you can also use a Boolean, and I'll cover those in a minute because I'll definitely use one at some point soon. And you could just have this as, say, like a very large wall, you know, if you understand what I'm pointing towards. Like, this is a big wall, and then you can use other objects. You can translate other cubes. Let me just take this and, say, scale it like this. I'm just going to do this very simply, because it's just going to get undone in a minute. And say I wanted to cut this out of my big wall that is the width of my frame. You know, I'm going to make it to the shape, and then I'm going to, you know, expand it on either side. And then I'll go, of course I can't figure out where I'm rotated at the moment. Then I'll go center it, rotation and scale, recalculate the normals, and then we click our object. We do the same. That's Shift-Alt-Control-C, center of mass surface, then Control-A, rotation and scale, then edit mode with tab, select everything with A, and then Control-N to recalculate your normals. And then it would just be, go to this little wrench, which is the modifier tab, Boolean, grab it. You see you have a nice little outline, and it's on difference. If you hit Z, you can see what it'll do. It'll cut a hole, and you just hit apply, and then you remove your shape, or in this case you would copy paste your shape over. And that's how you could do it. That's not how I'm going to do it. Just because Booleans can get messy. I mean, they are non-destructive modeling, so they are inherently good by nature in terms of accidentally destroying things or making a mess for yourself to clean up later. They don't do that. It's not very hard to fix. But you can very easily, if you're not actively, you know, Shift-Alt-Control-C, you know, centering, rotation and scale, and then recalculating between every Boolean on both objects. If you're not doing that, you can mess up a lot of your normals. And when you go to unwrap the model for texturing, it'll be a mess, and you're going to want to pull your hair out in frustration and do it all over again and then mess it up again. So that's why I don't normally use Booleans on very large parts, even though it's really easy. Like, I'll use a Boolean right here, and I might use one somewhere else on the frame, you know, right there. But otherwise, I'm going to do it with individual parts, which takes a while. Don't get me wrong, it takes a while. But it also doesn't fuck over like a Boolean will. So that's a plus side in my mind. So I think I'll leave that one there for now. I'm just going to focus on the top of the frame. And we'll cull some of these back faces because parts will intermesh together and you're not going to see some faces there. So why not get rid of them? You know, that's the methodology going on. You see my drawing isn't perfectly aligned, but you know, you take what you can get. So I'll just bring it down a little. Well, it's probably fine. And then you see I'll make one of these shapes right here. And then it can just go over here and over here. And then I can make the end, do all your bearing surfaces, and I forget what these are called. And then we could do the front, the cylinder saddle. Then we could do the rear frame extension. And then we could focus on spring rigging. I don't know if we'll get that far today, but I plan to at least get this and the cylinder saddle done on stream. So you just excuse me, you kind of have to plan and think how you need to lay out each part. So in this case, I'm going to want to give me a moment to think about this. I think I'm going to want to do this. And I'll make a little in-between part right here to do that little angle whenever it comes time. But I can go like this, and then this will all be one part right here, most likely. Yeah, it'll be one part. See here, we hit E. It's important to learn your keybinds. They'll save you time, so I'm going to hit E a couple times, like once and like twice, so I have enough like faces for that curve. And then I'm going to go all the way down here. All the way down to here, I think, because that stays straight. And then I'll do this a different way, this curve. And you can't always get everything perfect. It's an inconvenience to be sure, but it's just kind of, this is the method I do it. I'm probably shooting myself in the foot, and there are other modelers that are watching that are just face palming at how I do it, but it works enough. You know, I'm not complaining. So here I'm just selecting these fellows, these edges, and moving them over to kind of follow the shape of what we want. I may move that one a little more. You see, we'll have to make another shape right here and another one right there. But, shape, I keep saying shape, technically a mesh. We'll have to make some. But, you see, we have a nice little bit to our frame. And again, not the greatest way to do it. There are many, many, many more efficient methods to do it. Like I said, Boolean is perfectly acceptable if you know what you're doing and you're careful. So you see, I can just, of course this isn't done yet, so I'm not going to, but I should be able to do this and just change this up to be what I need to be. Well, I'll have to make this one by hand. You're not all the time going to have a nice transition to everything. Like, see, that is not going to work. So, you know, you take what you can get. You'll live to model another day. And with hard work and effort comes something good. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So don't try and shortcut if you can avoid it. Because a lot of times you just shoot yourself in the foot for later on. Is that flat? Yeah, it is. Wait. Yeah, it is. Just going crazy or something. Which, to be honest, is understandable. And I know people will be, oh, why aren't you worrying about you have all these extra edges right here? Don't worry, we're going to limited dissolve when we finish and we backface cull. So they're not really going to matter all that much. I think I'll make that as a separate piece so that I can cut it in the center and bring it down. I don't know. So this is a new tool we haven't used probably before all that much, and this is right here. It's loop cut. So press, hold control, and you can move your cut that you've just made around. And that is extremely handy for doing things like this. And I may have probably put one of those a little too close to another one for my tastes. But, you know, and now we can just select edges and repeat what we did above. Just kind of make our nice little smooth curve thing. Kind of smooth. It doesn't have to be perfect. You kind of learn to live with a little imperfection. If you want it to be perfect in a one-to-one scale recreation, good luck. You know, you're better off using your time on other things because, you know, you're never going to be able to do it perfectly. Otherwise, you're never going to finish a model. That's just kind of how it is. You got to learn to, and I'm a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist at heart, but I learned to live with a little imperfection in my modeling just because you don't really, I don't know, you, one second. Sorry, people walking in. But you just learn to live with it, because otherwise you're going to be working months and months and months on a model and you'll never be able to finish anything, which isn't good. I seem to have screwed up an edge right here. There we go. I should be able to take this over here and put it in about the same spot. Well, I think I can do that more efficiently, but it's good enough. You wonder how to do that. It's just Shift-D, select a face, Shift-D, space, separate by selection. And that'll separate it, and then you just center of mass surface. And on this, all I'm going to do is drag it across here like this, center it, and here's another great use of the loop cut tool. Is you do this, you just click it, 2, and then I believe, I don't know if you can, no, let's just click it, 2, swore there used to be a way to slide them out, but you could just count your snaps, like there and there are going to be my little snap steps. And I'm going to drag this up, maybe 1, 2, 1, 2, and one more set of 2 cuts. Loop cut tool, please. 1, 2. And again, not the most efficient way to do this. Because I'm probably setting myself up for a bunch of headaches later. But, you know, you see, it's not perfect, but you get the point that's being put across here. And I could center it later if I really want to. Might actually bring these down a little. Like, and then move this over like 1 and 1. Yeah, that's better. So this will just be a vertical post in our thingy. It's kind of like the mounting point for that post, because it's not going to be the full width. And I don't have any reference images to look at in the background at the moment, but always good to have some of those laying around. Reference images, that is. So now we're going to try and turn this into whatever the heck. We want that same angle. But we're also going to go and copy some things. So I'm going to bring all this down a little. And I didn't get the top, because the top is always going to be like that, unless you're on a nice sphere or something. Trying to see the best way to do this. Or, you know, be me, start from scratch. All I want is this, because I want this to be the same size. You see how I frame this slightly off kilter, don't worry about it. The inconsistencies of frame drawings tend to do that. Drawings are not your silver bullet. Definitely not. They are good, but they are not perfect. You will have to eyeball, you will have to deal with imperfections and inconsistencies every time you model. And you may get stuck on a part, you know, that you don't have a reference image for, and you may just have to kind of analyze how similar locomotives of the period looked in relation to that part, you know. Oh, glorious loop cut. Making my life a million times easier. That wasn't the right thing. There we go. Again, this isn't like perfect in terms of how it's lined up. I mean, some of these edges don't even really need to be edges per se. Like that could be much more flat. That looks a little better. Not having everything compressed in one spot. I can drag you up there and bring you down. And this, I can just move you. How's that look over here? About the same. Now this isn't really technically centered, but don't worry about it. I'm sure it's absolutely fine and dandy. Which means this is going to have to move up. Now, I should be able to just grab all this and move it. Albeit there's going to be a little modification going on, but everything should stay about aligned except for here. I didn't get a part. Dadgummit. Gotta hate that when you miss something. Grab it in a second. I want to try and center this probably. Then expand it. In this case, I'll just, Again, I'm not looking for absolute perfection. A little bit of inconsistency is fine with me. In this case, the frame isn't even going to go up. Looks like there's just a plate mounted there, so. Now all I gotta make is this, and this will be your spacer, or whatever. Between, because we're gonna have a universal distance between things. All I gotta do is make that. I want to select you, you. Separate it. Grab it. face, delete, limited dissolve. And that yeah, should make it all one face. And it's not the same on both sides. That's fine, how do you do? Which means I'll have to fix this one on all of them. But otherwise, it's starting to come together slowly. The frame definitely takes, whoops, that should not be that way. Okay. I guess this is a good time for a PSA on always make sure you're selecting what you should be selecting and nothing but. Otherwise, you won't make a mess. And nobody wants to make a huge mess. If you're wondering how I'm doing that, that's shift and just hitting 4 or 5 for my top side rotating. Yeah, everything stays a universal width, which is handy dandy, I would say. So now I should be able to just take this and move it over here. If I did everything correctly, now I can grab you, I believe. I may have to do this in parts because I want this right here. Doing this slightly differently than what I have done in the past, but it's not too differently that it's causing problems. But it is a little different. Now all I want is this, I believe. I think I'm going to want this bit right here over this one. And again, not centering things properly. That's not the end of the world. It's a couple of little tidbits. I mean, I can go like that and solve it. Actually, I think I might just move all this back a little. Just to lessen how much I gotta move things around. I'm not normally I'm not a, like, I don't know, ball of OCD when it comes to the frame because reasons. I don't like to spend a shit ton of time on the frame. It's boring to me, and it takes a while to do. Just making sure I'm at the right width. I may have to make everything a little bit narrower. It feels a little chunky. That might just be me, though. It does feel a little chunky, though, compared to other frames I've done. Yeah, I'll make it narrower at the end. Shouldn't be too difficult. I think I need to make this part. Meanwhile, it's thunderstorming in the background, so if, like, something bad happens, like, oh no, power goes out, not my fault, blame the utility company, please. 'Cause that's not my problem. Guess this one will be a little bit narrower. So I think this will all be a part. Yeah, it'll definitely all be a part. It's the little things, man. The little things kill me. Again, I'm not going for perfection, but I am going for it to resemble each side, so it doesn't look horrible. But it is kind of this weird angled on either side thing, and that's because this is like the bearing surface, I guess, or this is a big block that holds a brass bearing surface that surrounds the axle. So that's where all your weight is going on the axle, is the bearing surface. So you need something to like hold that in, and it's a big wedge basically. And then these are bolted on underneath. I guess this one will be a little smaller. We have 3, 4. Guess all these are going to be different sizes then. One, two, three, 4. Yeah, I don't get why these are all one size, but these are different sizes. Baldwin makes no sense. I guess that's just it. Baldwin makes no sense. Anyways, trying to think how I'm going to do all this. Other than this, I need to do this part. I'll just go like that, and I'll get a nice little block for this cube, if you will. Now, I might accidentally screw over one of my, I don't know what you call it, keybinds doing this, but I also might not, so we shall see. I'm going to try and do Control B, but I'm going to invert it. So I forget how to do this. So normally it does this, but I think if you hit P, you can invert the profile. Question is, I just don't know how to invert it properly to where, so Control P. Might have trouble getting it to where I want it to be. Might have to manually fiddle with it, and I think the default for Control B, that is the profile control is 0.5, 0.5 in the normal direction. So now if I'd like just duplicate this for a test and try and do it right here, it should still be inverted, but if I hit P and then like 0.5, that should fix it. And I can just delete that because I've inverted everything back to normal. How many faces do I have there? Like 2? I'll space those accordingly. Symmetry is not my forte on frames, so I know there's some people out there that are probably dying at how I'm messing up all my symmetry. My beautiful, beautiful symmetry. All gone to waste. And again, creative liberty right here. I'm going to expand this out a little. Well, actually, I want to grab that, and I want to... oftentimes you will accidentally create things you don't want to create. Like in this case, you saw there, I have an extra face because of the Control B, so just select it all and do... give me a second. I forget my buttons. Nope. Nope, not Shift V, Control V. Yes, Control V and then merge vertices by distance. And it has a default distance that should work, but I'm just going to increase that a little just in case. And that should get rid of any double verts. You know, if you have two vertices on the same point, you just have a face there that you can't even see because they're so close together. The triangles on this are a little atrocious already, which I'm not too fond of actually. So I might make this like as flat as possible and then merge those. Mainly because if you're doing a bunch of curves and stuff and have all these stuff, it'll get better when I like remove doubles and then backface cull everything. It'll get better, but your frame eats up a number of triangles, mainly once you get around to doing the spring rig and all that, because that's your suspension, and your suspension takes up a fair bit. Not that you have to have it, but it looks really, really good, to be honest, if you do have one. And then, what else? Yeah, mainly your suspension and just your frame in general eats up a bunch, because you got a lot of nice round shapes and smooth things and all that stuff you really don't want to have, but you kind of have to have because the drawing says so. It's a pain. And this model probably will end up being, oh, I don't know, 50, 60,000 triangles when it's done without the tinder. But it might be less. It depends on how much detail I want to have, but I know the person who's commissioning wants a fair amount of detail, so we'll go for a fair amount of detail on it. I'm just going to grab this face. I'd like it. And separate. I think regardless of the frame extension going on, I believe conveniently that the not frame extension, the cylinder saddle, I believe the underside of the cylinder saddle remains the same, regardless of, yeah, whatever the heck, how there's a different top of the cylinder saddle. Just going to select all these and bring them down. Again, this isn't the best way to do it, but it is a way to make a frame. So that's kind of the bottom or lower cylinder saddle. I don't know why this is outlined and this is outlined. It may be that this one is slightly narrower. It might be the case. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I can check the top side. Yeah, seems like they're the same, so I might just... I could just skip out on that little corner and just do it straight. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Skip out on the corner, that is. Save some triangles. It's going to be doing some jank stuff anyway. think I might have to do a slap a loop cut right there, just so I can get this right. And in this case, I'm just going to go Control B and add like a face, singular, right there, and just adjust it by hand till it's how I like it, I guess. Everything is completely dependent on your interpretation or how you view it. I mean, there are some, I guess, universal standards of what it looks good and what looks not good, but oftentimes I just work by the rule. If you're happy with it, you know, you've done a good job. If you have no gripes with the model. I mean, I guess I could put a third face here, but again, triangles, glorious triangles that you don't want to use too many of. And I'm already using a lot of curved shapes and stuff, and that's just adding to the end total at a pretty alarming rate. So I won't put it against you if your first model has a few too many. A lot of times people's first models have you know, kind of uncontrollable amount of triangles in them, because you don't really know how to like backface cull and all that jazz. You haven't really gotten everything under your belt per se, so you know, it's better to take some time, and you know, sometimes you just gotta sacrifice for the performance, you know, rendering wise. Less triangles equals less stuttering, and you can have more of the exact same model, I guess, in the frame of, you know, whatever. Trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. It's a little odd. Intriguing. A lot of interesting shapes going on today. I can't say I've had a frame quite like this one in a while, a good while. I mean, it's been a fair minute since I've done something this, I don't know. It's not out of the ordinary, but it is a little more complicated than what I'm used to doing. But, you know, I'm sure it's fine. I'll figure it out. It's alright. It's good enough. Sorry, just checking the recording time. Probably don't want it over an hour and a half. So we'll try and get this front frame extension done mighty quick, probably. I think these at both ends are going to be the same, roughly speaking, so I'll try and do them as such. Yeah, about like that. Now I'm going to have to deviate from this and work up here instead to make the top of the front frame extension. So I'll just grab one of these nice little faces, preferably something that's still snapped to the grid. And I'm going to work up here. So that's at the end right there. I think actually it'll be easier to go like this, and I'll grab that part and do it with a couple of loop cuts in a moment. Like, this is the great thing about loop cuts, is you can slap one and it won't screw over your everything, I guess. That's why zooming in and doing it, if you can, is a little better. Sometimes you get smaller snap steps. You know what? I think that angle's good enough. And I'm hoping that there's a plugin for Blender that allows you to display the keys on the screen. I'm hoping that gets updated to 2.8 soon. And then it'll be a lot easier because I'll have in the bottom corner somewhere, I guess over here, it'll show you what keys I'm doing real time, which will be insanely helpful because you'll be seeing what keybinds I'm using all the time, and I won't have to repeat myself like telling you them. So I'd call that done right there. So that'll go right there, I'd assume. It's a little different than that, but it's not outward sloping piston valves, so I don't blame it. It's kind of dumb having that little angle there, if I'm going to be honest, you know. Yeah, I might, I think I could get rid of this. Like, oh gosh. It's not any good way to do it. I guess I could align these think I might need to snap these to the grid. For the sake that I don't tear my hair out. I think this needs to be brought up anyway a little bit. And I'll cull some of these back faces. I don't know if I'm going to make them all different, like, widths. I'm imagining on the real thing it probably is some different widths going on here. And that's why this kind of is overlaid in front, is because it's a little bigger. Just select all that, why not? And now here's where the fun begins. Again, not Alt B, it's Control V by distance. Make sure there's nothing dumb going on. Delete, limit to dissolve. You see that sends the triangles from 92 to 48. But I also kind of lost all my little tweaky thingies, so, you know, to be done with, I don't know why I keep doing that. To be done when you're actually done. And make sure this is probably like at 2.5 or less. Just so that you don't accidentally make like an angle where you don't want an angle to be. Because that can be really bad. Kind of screw you over later on. It really can. And it will. I might just bring that up to like here. I actually want to bring this up a little bit. Again, deviating from the drawing, but, you know, it's not the end of the world. Well, there's our, looks a little weird, but there's our cylinder saddle, all done. Yeah, I don't know about this weird angle stuff going on. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. I imagine one of these is a little smaller, or both of them are a little smaller than this. So it's, again, I didn't do it perfectly accurate, so it may be good to bring this down and just make this a cube, perhaps. And then I can make everything a different width. And just take this and go across. Again, kind of deviating from realism, but I'd like to save triangles over realism. So I'm going to just take all these and just show in front of or behind? Behind, so they're narrower. Check the top. I mean, it doesn't look like it's any narrower over here. I'll just join those all together because they're all one bit. And then, why do I keep doing that? It's Control V by distance. And actually, I don't want to join them all together. I want to do all these individually. Because it will merge by distance. So if you have things overlapping or like, you know, perfectly, like I have it, you know, they're perfectly touching, especially in the corners. Yeah, you can kind of set yourself up for some disaster right there. I'm just deleting some back faces at the moment. Just thought I'd do this now so I don't forget. Let's see. Guess I can stay. And now all these, I can just select them and go. Delete, limited, dissolve. You see, that really lowers the triangle count and makes everything a lot simpler. And then I can join everything together. Well, not this, actually. I'll separate. So this will be, I guess, slightly smaller. I guess I'll make this just simple. I don't like wasting triangles, but it doesn't look right. And I don't know how wide this should be, so just fool with some values. Same for this. I don't know how that should be. Intriguing. Let's see. This part. That part. Huh. How in the heck am I gonna do that? Might save it for next time. But that's basically the basics of a frame. I mean, I'll wrap it up in a second and just at least get my start of my frame extension done. So should be able to just bring that up, bring that down, make the shape, and then I'll cut this. And it looks like the frame extension sits on that side. Basically just limited dissolve, and actually not limited dissolve yet. I want to grab this first. Separate you, and then I can limited dissolve this. Limited dissolve. And I want this face for a specific reason, and that's cutting out this kind of wrong side, this shape right here. It's going to take a minute to kind of get that how I'd want it. I might as well add like 4 loop cuts, or 3. there. This can come over here. This right here that I'm using is Control B plus V, and that's basically your regular old Control B, the level, that is, and but you do it on vertices only. So sometimes it makes jank-ass stuff like that, but otherwise, you know, you have a good day, nothing goes wrong, your model's alright, and you go home, go to sleep, go fulfilled, or go to sleep fulfilled, or something. I don't know. Let me just move that there. And V, and that did not go very well. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now that I've made this, I'm going to make it less messy by limited dissolving it, and actually also making sure I don't have any doubles. And now we're going to do this. We're going to select all of it, E, and extrude. I'm just holding Control to keep it snapped. And now we're going to center mass surface, rotation and scale, recalculate all of our normals. And we're going to do the same for this. And we're going to do a Boolean right here. So add modifier, Boolean, on difference, right here. Ensure it's basically what you want. And then apply. And I don't think the shape gets reused right there, so I think I can delete it. And now we have that nice little shape cut out. And the frame is definitely a little chunky, I think. It's a little chunky. So I'll probably move it this way, maybe off camera. But I think I've covered, you know, basics of frame construction decently well. Cylinder saddle, we have places where we'll seat our drivers, our bearing surfaces, and then definitely whenever I stream again, we can move on to spring rig as well. And we might get to doing trucks, and we might get to doing wheels, but we'll also do the rear frame extension. That's just, you know, to hold the cab and the firebox, and that's just on the back right here. But we'll get to that in the next segment. I hope everybody learned something new today, and I'll be back on the modeling game soon. Otherwise, take care. See you again soon.